The first thing that truly terrified me wasn't the darkness, the open ocean, or even the thought that something might be following my boat. It was the sound of footsteps. Small, deliberate thumps were coming from somewhere above the cabin where I was lying awake, alone in the middle of the ocean. At first, I tried to convince myself they were nothing. Boats make strange noises. The hull creaks, equipment shifts, water strikes the sides, and when you're floating miles from shore in the middle of the night, every sound seems louder than it should. But these weren't random noises. They came quickly, one after another, with a rhythm that sounded disturbingly similar to someone walking across the deck. I had recently moved from Georgia to Florida, and my wife and I had bought a new waterfront house. The only problem was that my boat was still in Georgia. I didn't have a vehicle with a tow hitch, and I didn't even have a trailer capable of carrying the boat. So, after thinking it over, sailing it down seemed like the simplest solution. My wife stayed behind to finish moving the rest of our belongings. My family wasn't exactly enthusiastic about joining me for the trip, and honestly, I couldn't blame them. So I kissed them goodbye, loaded enough food and supplies for the journey, and set out alone. The first day went smoothly. I sailed for roughly 10 hours, taking breaks along the way, and eventually settled down for the night. I was exhausted, but sleeping aboard a rocking fishing boat was far harder than I had expected. I spent hours shifting from one side to the other, trying to find a position that would let me forget the constant movement beneath me. Then I heard it. Thump, thump, thump. I froze against the pillow. The sound was coming from above my head. For several seconds, I didn't move at all. I simply listened. The ocean outside was dark and endless. There were no nearby houses, no dock lights, no voices, nothing but the boat and the water. And yet, someone sounded like they were walking on my deck. I knew there was probably a reasonable explanation. But the longer the footsteps continued, the harder that explanation became to believe. I finally decided I had to look. I didn't want to open the cabin door quickly. If someone really was outside, I had no idea what I would find. So I reached for the handle and slowly began turning it, trying not to make a sound. I barely had the door open when something happened that made my entire body tense. A massive splash erupted somewhere beside the boat. It sounded like someone, or something, had just jumped into the water. I stopped breathing for a moment. My mind immediately went to the same impossible thought. Someone had been on my boat. But how? We were far out at sea. There was nowhere for a stranger to come from. No reason for anyone to be out there, and certainly no reason for them to be aboard my boat. I didn't stay around to find out. I rushed into the cockpit, started the engine, and pushed the boat away as quickly as I could. I wanted distance between myself and whatever had been outside. Then I heard another sound. The boat bumped into something in the water. It wasn't a hard impact. Whatever I had hit wasn't heavy enough to damage the boat, but it was heavy enough for me to hear the dull contact and feel a slight bump beneath my feet. I looked toward the darkness, but the lights weren't on, and I wasn't exactly eager to investigate. So I kept going. I sailed for several more hours through the deep night. By then, I was wide awake, running mostly on adrenaline. Eventually, exhaustion began catching up with me. I shut off the motor and returned to the cabin. I used the word bed loosely. I wasn't really sleeping. I had barely been lying there for half an hour when the sound returned. Thump, thump, thump. This time, it was louder, clearer, and somehow more deliberate. My heart began pounding almost instantly. I listened carefully, hoping the sounds would become random again, something I could blame on the boat. They didn't. The footsteps continued with an unnerving consistency. There was no way I could keep hiding inside the cabin all night. So I forced myself out of bed, opened the door, and checked the boat. Nothing. The deck was empty. There was no one in sight. For a moment, I felt almost embarrassed. Maybe it really had been the boat making those noises. Maybe exhaustion and darkness had turned ordinary sounds into something terrifying. I returned to the cabin and lay down again. This time, I stayed completely still. And that's when I heard something far worse. I stopped moving and listened. At first, I heard nothing unusual. Then I noticed it. Breathing. Not the wind. Not the ocean. Not mine. Someone else was breathing inside the cabin. The realization hit me so hard that I felt every muscle in my body tighten. I didn't immediately react. Somehow, I managed to stay quiet. I didn't want whoever was in there to know that I had heard them. I slowly got out of bed. Then I stepped outside the cabin and locked myself inside the cockpit. My plan was simple. Keep sailing until I reached shore. There was a small window between the cabin and cockpit, and a curtain covered it from the cabin side. I couldn't stop myself from looking back at it. Every minute or so, I would glance toward the window, expecting to see a face staring back at me. Most of the time, there was nothing. Then, during one of those quick glances, I saw something. The curtain had shifted slightly upward in one corner. Behind it was an eye, and part of a face. Someone was looking directly into the cockpit. I immediately turned away. I pretended I hadn't seen anything. My mind started racing. For one brief, desperate moment, I wondered if it could somehow be my young son playing a prank on me. But that thought disappeared almost instantly. I had watched him wave goodbye when I left. He wasn't on the boat. Whoever was behind that curtain was a stranger. For the next 3 or 4 hours, I lived through what felt like an endless nightmare. I kept expecting the cockpit door to open. Every sound made me tense. Every movement in the darkness made me imagine someone stepping toward me. The worst part was knowing that I wasn't alone while having no idea what the person intended to do. I kept sailing. Eventually, I reached the narrow canal leading towards shore. About 15 minutes earlier, I had called the police and asked them to have several officers waiting at the dock. It was still dark when I finally saw them. There were people standing on the dock ahead of me. For the first time in hours, I felt something close to relief. I brought the boat alongside the dock and stopped. The instant I could see the officers clearly, I came out of the cockpit screaming for help. I pointed toward the cabin. The officers immediately understood that something was seriously wrong. 2 of them moved inside with their hands near their pistols. Then the waiting began. It lasted only seconds, but those seconds felt much longer. I heard shouting from inside the cabin. The officers had found someone. My entire body went cold. A few seconds later, they dragged a man out and placed him in handcuffs. He looked nothing like anyone I had expected to find aboard my boat. He had extremely long, gray, wet hair hanging around his face. A similarly long beard covered much of his features. He was wearing a gray t-shirt and skinny, ripped jeans that were soaked through. He looked like he had just crawled out of the ocean. As the officers walked him past me, I stared at him, trying to understand what I was seeing. Then he looked directly at me and laughed. It wasn't a normal laugh. There was something deeply unsettling about the way he looked at me while doing it. The sound was strange and off-putting, the kind of laugh that immediately made the situation feel even more disturbing. If I had to describe his appearance and behavior, the closest comparison I could make was to someone heavily involved with meth. But the appearance wasn't what bothered me most. It was the question that had been haunting me for hours. How did he get onto my boat? The police questioned him. They asked him how he had gotten aboard. They asked when he had gotten there. They asked what he had been doing. He didn't give them any answers. He wouldn't explain how he had managed to get onto a boat that had been sailing through open water. He wouldn't explain why he was hiding inside the cabin. And he never explained what he intended to do. Standing there on the dock, I kept replaying the sounds from earlier. The footsteps, the splash, the bump beneath the boat, the breathing, and then the eye behind the curtain. Everything suddenly felt connected. But there was one thought that disturbed me more than all the others. If the man had been hiding inside my cabin, where exactly had he been? I remembered the sound of breathing. I remembered lying on that bed, believing I was alone. And then I began thinking about the space underneath it. The possibility was horrifying. He could have been there the entire time, while I was lying only inches above him, trying to sleep, while I was listening to the strange sounds, while I was wondering whether someone was following me. I might have been sharing that tiny cabin with a complete stranger without knowing it. And if that was true, then the footsteps weren't the only thing I had misunderstood. By the time everything was over, exhaustion had completely taken control of me. The police had the stranger in custody, and the immediate danger was gone. But my mind wouldn't stop replaying the night. I kept thinking about the moment I first heard the thumps overhead. At the time, I had assumed they were ordinary sounds from the boat. Then came the splash. I had convinced myself that whatever caused it had gone into the water. Then the second round of footsteps started. I checked the deck and found nothing. That should have reassured me. Instead, it became one of the most disturbing parts of the entire experience. Because someone really had been there. The breathing proved it. And the eye behind the curtain proved that I wasn't imagining someone watching me. What I still couldn't understand was how the man had gotten aboard in the first place. The police never got an explanation from him. There was no confession. No clear story. No final answer that made the whole thing seem reasonable. Only a stranger with wet clothes, long gray hair, a disturbing laugh, and absolutely no explanation for how he ended up inside my boat in the middle of the ocean. And then there was that thought about the bed. Even now, that may be the part one find hardest to accept. I had spent hours lying there. I had been trying to sleep while the boat rocked beneath me. I had pressed my head into the pillow, shifted from side to side, and waited for exhaustion to finally overcome the movement of the water. If he really had been hiding underneath the bed, then I had been closer to him than I ever realized. Close enough to hear him breathe. Close enough for him to hear me move. And I never knew. Eventually, I returned to the cabin. I was completely drained, physically and mentally. The adrenaline that had kept me awake for hours finally disappeared, and the moment I lay down, I fell asleep. By late morning, I reached our new waterfront house. The trip that had started as a simple solution to a transportation problem was finally over. But I didn't arrive feeling relieved about the journey. I arrived knowing that somewhere in the middle of the night, while I believed I was alone on the open ocean, another man had somehow been hiding aboard my boat. I still don't know exactly how he got there. I only know that when I heard those first footsteps, there really was someone on my boat. And the most frightening possibility is that he may have been there